Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of MC Commute. My name is Michael Gilbert, the host of this week's episode, and today we are going to be riding something a little bit different, the 2020 Royal Enfield Himalayan. Now, this is a budget, small bore take on the adventure touring or dual sport segment, so we got a lot to talk about. Why don't we get on the road? Alright guys, the Royal Enfield Himalayan, it's a small bore adventure ready machine. Now, that being said, it's got a 411cc single cylinder power plant. It's obviously air cooled, not the biggest, rowdiest motor on the block, but it does the job well, and we'll talk about that as we get going on. It's also got a 21-inch front wheel and a 17-inch rear. Now that's going to give this motorcycle a little bit of some off-road capability as well. Now, Royal Enfield, I think they did a really good job with the look of this motorcycle. I'm really impressed. This colorway, obviously you see the tank, we see the front fender here. It has a little bit of that, I don't know what we call it, geometric camo. I think that they call this the sleek colorway. I really like it. So anyways, I think Royal Enfield, they built a pretty sound motorcycle, so why don't we test it out and get on the road? 411 cc's of fury. Oh yeah. Let's listen to this baby sing. Not the most monstrous exhaust note, but it gets the job done, and it's also it's a very early morning here on our commute to the motorcyclist offices, so I appreciate the stealthiness of this machine. The Royal Enfield Himalayan, like I said, it's got that 411cc air-cooled power plant. Let's just ring it out just to give you guys a feel for it. It's not that it's dog slow, but it's definitely not a very fast motorcycle either. I think that there's going to be motorcycles that go faster, maybe with a little bit less vibration that we'll talk about later on. As you can see, it's not the fastest motorcycle in the world, but it gets the job done. This motorcycle will get you anywhere you need to go, as long as you're not in too much of a hurry to get it going. The Royal Enfield, it's got a 5-speed gearbox. Sometimes shifting through that gearbox up and down is a little bit clunky. You kind of just feel like maybe sometimes you get stuck in between gears a little bit. Let's hear. You can kind of see the bike jolt around underneath us as we're slowing down for this red light here. But it's not terrible, but it's not the best thing either. Overall, though, I think Royal Enfield did a really good job with this motorcycle, especially just the ride quality of this bike. You know, I think it kind of starts with the ergonomics. The reach the foot peg is quite comfortable. It doesn't feel like you're overextended, but it also doesn't feel like you're all cramped up, so that it really offers a balance of comfort, but also being able to use your legs to manipulate the motorcycle underneath you. Now the handlebar is a little bit upright. As you can see, I feel like, I don't want to say it's an ape hanger, but at the same time the handlebars are definitely a little bit taller. Now that can sometimes be a little bit of a nuisance when you're out riding on the road. That said, when you stand up, this motorcycle definitely has a little bit of off-road capability. When you stand up, it offers a nice relaxed reach to the bar while giving you some control as you trek down the dirt roads. And again, the chassis composure kind of lends itself there too. You know, this motorcycle is very neutrally handing, very well balanced. I think, you know, the suspension, you feel a little bit of the imperfections going across the tarmac. And it's not the most pleasant magic carpet ride in the world, but I think that Royal Enfield did a good job of balancing that small bump compliance that we all look for, that magic carpet like ride quality, with big hit support that will handle those unexpected inputs, those hard braking zones, the G-outs in the road, maybe an unexpected bump, something like that. I think that Royal Enfield just did a good job with that balance. As you can see, it's a little bit of a tall gearing with this bike. I think that, you know, Royal Enfield, obviously this thing has a 5-speed gearbox instead of a 6th. I wish that we had that 6th gear, and that's something we'll talk about a little bit later on as we're cruising down the highway. But a little bit of a tall gear ratio. Sometimes getting away from the lights, I feel like I have to slip the clutch a little bit. Nothing insane, but it makes me question, you know, like I haven't really spent a whole lot of time with this motorcycle off-road, but let's say if we were traversing a mountain, a steep mountain or a steep road, would that gearing be enough? Would this motorcycle be able to tractor up it? I have a little bit of doubt, but at the same time, this motorcycle has a little bit of a tractor-like feel, like we talked about. It just it kind of just hums along and gets the job done, and I feel like it might not be too much of a concern. That said, 6-speed gearbox, something we'll talk about a little bit later on. Pull on these brakes, man. These brakes, I don't know how to put it. These brakes are a little bit of a disappointment, if I'm being completely honest, on this Royal Enfield. The feel at the lever is quite wooden. It feels like you don't really know how much is going on at the brake caliber by pulling the lever. It takes a lot of riding experience to really understand how much pressure is being applied and how much stopping force you have left in reserve. Now, it also honestly just stops slow. This motorcycle, I took it out to our private testing facility and I recorded 60 to 0 braking performance numbers. Now, let's just say that most motorcycles, I'd say on average, is from 60 mile an hour to a dead halt is around roughly low 130 feet. Sometimes less, sometimes in the 120s, sometimes a little bit higher, but let's just say 130 feet is pretty average to get these motorcycles stopped. Now, the Royal Enfield Himalayan, it broke in 175 feet. That's quite a bit different than your typical average. So that being said, when you come from riding other motorcycles, when you come from riding any sort of bike, it seems like, and hop on this Royal Enfield, it almost makes you feel like you need to recalibrate your braking zones. Like, it makes you rethink what is possible and how quickly you can get this motorcycle stopped. That said, you know, I've been out on the freeway and I'm just kind of thinking to myself, you know, if that traffic stops in front of me and those kids are watching their TV in the back of the car, I might be getting a first-hand experience of watching that TV too, because I feel like I might just go straight through the back of the car because this motorcycle won't stop. That said, I do have to comment that I feel like the braking performance has gotten a little bit better as this motorcycle is broken in. Obviously, we have about 400 miles on this bike, and I do believe that the braking performance has gotten better as those pads have bedded in and everything's kind of just broken in a little bit. So hopefully, if we were to take it back and do those braking performance tests again, we would see more impressive numbers. Not a whole lot of roll-on performance. Trying to get by cars, you know, I appreciate this motor for what it is. It's a gentle little motor, quite quiet, which on an early morning I appreciate, not just drawing too much attention. And to be honest, I was riding this motorcycle down in San Diego County, and I got lost on these little back roads down in Duluth, is what it's called. Very rural farmland, just very quiet. Very quiet area, and I appreciated the Royal Enfield because it just kind of tractored up all the hills that I was riding, and it was very quiet and I didn't draw any unnecessary attention. I like it. That being said, though, it makes 21.8 horsepower on the motorcyclist dyno and something like 20 pound-feet of torque. definitely not the most impressive motorcycle we've ridden on our MC Commutes, but you know, it kind of just chugs along and gets the job done. We'll talk about as we get on the freeway here too in a little bit. I wish that we had some more roll-on power just to get ourselves in and out of situations, past cars, and make for a little bit safer ride. Talking about that engine performance, this motorcycle cruises around town quite comfortably. Obviously, I'm in top gear doing about 55 mile an hour down Irvine Boulevard here, and we're cruising about 4,000 RPM. Just really pleasant. There's not a whole lot of vibrations through the controls. There will be a little bit later on as we get into the freeway, and we'll talk about that there as the RPM is a little bit higher. Overall, though, super pleasant ride. Going back to that engine performance too, you know, this motorcycle, I also recorded quarter mile times. It had a 17.7 second quarter mile. Again, not the most impressive performance figure that we have seen, and it only did something like 72 miles an hour across the finish line. But again, this motorcycle, that's not what it's about. I think that this motorcycle is definitely it's for someone looking for a motorcycle that they can use to get from point A to point B. This guy's just wanting to pull out right next to me. Get from point A to point B in a quiet, just, I don't want to say gentle, but just smooth manner. As long as you're not in a rush, I think this motorcycle does a really good job of just fulfilling those needs. Maybe, you know, if I was living out on a farm or I was living in a country town, and I needed to get around the land or check out the crops, I think this bike would do a really good job there. All right, let's see. We're coming up to the roundabout here on my Commute. Let's see what this little Royal Enfield's got for us on the side of the tire. It's got, speaking of those tires, it's got Pirelli MT60 tires. I think that we touched on that. Let's zip through here. Oops. Let's zip through here. Now we can really kind of rail through. Oh, we got a red light. You know, this motorcycle, like I said earlier, I think that it's just a really neutrally balanced. I don't think this light's going to detect us, guys. I'm just going to go for it. There's no one around. Really neutrally balanced chassis. You know, it doesn't carve the fastest, but at the same time, it's really composed when you get out in the twisties, you know, and does a really good job. We are on California Interstate 5, headed to the motorcyclist offices, kind of with the rush hour traffic right now. We're in top gear, doing about 65, almost 70 miles an hour, spinning about 5,000 RPM. Honestly, the ride is quite comfortable. You know, this windshield here actually creates a nice pocket of air for the rider. You know, I don't feel like I'm getting buffeted around too much. Obviously, we're not going too fast this morning. As we get going faster, you know, this motorcycle, it does get a little bit of vibrations going through the handlebars, more so going through the foot pegs as well. But overall, pretty comfortable ride. I wouldn't suggest this bike if you're just doing long freeway hauls, especially in somewhere like California where everyone feels like they got to go 140 miles an hour to keep up with the pace of life. This motorcycle doesn't really fit in. In fact, I typically ride in the slow lane just because I don't want to feel like I'm holding someone up. And what we talked about earlier, this bike doesn't necessarily have the roll-on power to get myself in and out of situations should I need to. So we got I'm fond of this little dash here. Obviously we got our speedometer, big, bold. We can very easily see where we're going. We got our small tachometer up here in the right hand corner, fuel gauge, and then this is a neat feature, especially for this segment. I wish that more motorcycles in this segment had this feature. It's a little compass. Now I have to comment, I don't think I've ever quite seen the compass right. It's you know, I feel like it's always it's always calibrated in the wrong direction. Not quite 180, but it's definitely not headed in the right direction sometimes. Now, if it says we're going southeast right now, I'd actually say we're kind of going southwest. We're kind of headed towards the ocean right now. We are going south, so I'll give it that. But it does make me question that I've never quite seen this compass right, and I'm wondering who at Royal Enfield said, nope, that's okay, just sign off on it and it'll be fine, because I have heard of other Royal Enfield Himalayan riders or owners having the same issue. But you know, I got to give it to them. I think that it is a neat feature, and I'd like to see other manufacturers go along with that. The mirrors too, I'm actually really impressed with the mirrors. You know, I jumped on this bike yesterday just to ride it home for you guys before our commute here, and I was a little bit disappointed with the mirrors at first, and then the actual vibration, there's hardly any. So I actually have a really clear picture of what's going on behind me. That said, I think that we could have a little bit more surface area over there on that mirror, or on both mirrors I should say, just to get a little bit more visual of what's going on behind us. But overall, vibration, everything that goes along with that, I think they did a really good job there. We talked about, I said that I wish this motorcycle had a 6-speed gearbox. Well, that kind of goes with where I'm living and what I'm having to use this motorcycle for. 6 speeds out on the California Highway 5 when traffic is a little bit lighter and everyone's kind of hauling butt. Now, I feel like this motorcycle, it really kind of tops out about 80 miles an hour. Sometimes you can get a little bit more with a downhill and a tailwind, but that six gear would take it out of, you know, 6,000 RPM, 6,500 RPM, and just let the bike roll a little bit more freely as you're going down the highway, and hopefully we can get even better fuel economy numbers, which, speaking of, this motorcycle does a really good job. On average, between all my riding, between commuting, between getting lost down in San Diego and kind of putting around, I've had an average of about mid-50s, 57, 58, you know, total. Obviously a very fuel-minded motorcycle. Sometimes I see it go down as low as mid-40s or even a little bit lower than that. Sometimes I've seen it as high 60s. So it really depends on how you ride this motorcycle. But with the 4-gallon tank, you know, there's no question that you could get 200 plus miles out of this bad boy, unless you're kind of just wringing its neck and sucking fuel. We're coming up. We got our wheelie zone, we got our braking zone, and we'll see what this bad boy's made of. I can't promise this thing's gonna get off the ground for a wheelie, but we'll try. This is a good motorcycle for beginners, if I'm being honest. Very neutrally handling. It's got a low seat height, 31.9 inches. Definitely not the most performance-minded motorcycle, but a very composed chassis and gentle motor. I think that this would be a really good learning platform with comfortable ergonomics. Maybe get some new riders into that adventure touring segment. Oh yeah, ripping. Alright guys, I feel like you guys are gonna laugh at me. A little bit of false neutral there. I don't think this... Oh man, that was probably the biggest wheelie I've done in a while. Alright, let's see if we can back it in. I already know a little bit of the answer, but I'll just show you guys and we'll talk about it. Ripping. Nope. Doesn't quite slow itself down. You know, this motorcycle, it has a 300 millimeter disc up front with ABS on the rear as well, obviously. But I never really feel the ABS kick in, especially in the front. You know, I feel like again, what we talked about, this motorcycle doesn't have a ton of stopping power to where it really fires that ABS off. Now, I'm not going to say it doesn't work. I do feel some feedback through the rear brake pedal occasionally, but for the most part, I never really feel like I'm getting any ABS feedback. So, anyways, that was our commute to the motorcyclist office. Now, this motorcycle, as we've talked about many times now, it's not the most performance-minded bike of the bunch. Then again, I don't think that it was ever designed to be. You know, I think that, you know, in that particular segment, for relatively the same cost, you could look at something like the Kawasaki Versus 300, or something if you wanted to spend a few thousand more dollars, something like the Honda CB500X. Now, I do enjoy this motorcycle, and we got to talk price a little bit. This motorcycle retails in the United States for $4,750, a budget-conscious machine. Would I buy it? I actually really enjoyed my time on this bike. At the beginning, you know, the first few miles, I thought, man, this isn't the bike for me. Then I spent some time with it. Like I said, I got lost out in the backcountry, and for that type of riding, for around town riding, I think that Royal Enfield really kind of struck it on the head. You know, I think, you know, as we talked about, there's other motorcycles in the category if you're willing to spend some more money, but I like this bike. I really do. So, and I really enjoyed our MC Commute today, and I hope that you guys did too. So, if you guys like this video, be sure to give us a like, comment. We want to hear from you. Subscribe to the Motorcyclist YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.